Hi Malik, how are you today?
Hi, Karka. I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. We have a bunch of people joining us here today, and let's just give it 1 minute and then we can get started. So, those of you who are here, I'm Karkavel MJ. I go by Karka, and I have Malik here with me. I'm the founder CTO of Platform 3 Solution, and bring with me an extensive experience on the archival and data governance. I started my career about 20 years ago with a big healthcare organization. From there, moved on to take different technical roles before I moved to start running programs for portfolio rationalization, decommissioning. Had tons of experience, especially in the archival space. So now working as the CTO of Platform 3 Solutions, and I'm very excited to have all of you guys here today. Malik, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your experience while we wait for others to join, and then we can get this call started.
Sure, Karka. Thanks for that. And hi, all. So I'm Malik. I head the products division of Platform3 Solutions, and I have approximately 12 years of experience doing decommissioning and handling data with governance and stuff like that. So very excited for the session. And before we hit start, let me talk about why archival has become an important need and my experiences about how archival help the customers to see some value. So my experience and one I'm going to talk about is from one of the largest healthcare technology company that we work with, which grew in size mainly because of acquisitions and mergers. While they merged, which was actually good for the company, the IT sector was actually having too much difficulties. Like every merger brought in a load of systems, and these systems had to be managed. And while most of them are legacy, people did not know how to handle it, and they were having trouble in maintaining regulatory compliances because they are always dealing with data that could be PII enabled. So that is where we came in, and we probably can be called as digital decouplers for them. So we help them set up a system which is basically a decommissioning factory that was able to scan across all these systems and get rid of all the unwanted ones. When I say it's not that simple, like we had to find out the important data, move them into the archive, and ensure that regulatory compliance are met at each and every point. See, while we are doing this, we enabled a centralized repository for them to look for the data, and also enforce a frame with which they will be able to establish regulatory compliance as and when it needs. But you know what is the actual benefit that they gained? Karka, what will be this?
Cost saving.
Yes, they had a massive cost saving of approximately 80% while doing these operations.
The story of cost saving for archival itself, right? It's pretty old, and I know a lot of people here will also agree with me that cost saving for archival has been what I would consider traditional, because there is definitely cost saving, but is that an incentive to actually archive your data? I personally don't believe that, right? Because there is a very big part of compliance and governance that archival provides, and that's kind of what we are here to talk about today as well, right? Like, what is archival, what is governance, and how they relate with each other. So while I agree with you that cost savings is a big reason why a lot of organizations start adopting archival, the real reason of why an organization or an individual should consider archival for their organization is mainly because archival provides governance of our data. Don't you agree?
That's very true, Karka. If you see the story that I told you about from experience, it's not just about cleaning the digital. It's about creating a centralized area where they manage, they save costs at the same time, keep all the information safe. So that's the power that I see that archival brings when combined with governance.
Absolutely agree. So let me kick off today's proceeding. I think we have quite a few people who have joined us here today. So we are here to talk about archival and its impact on governance, right? Or governance and its impact on archival. So they are two huge topics that are very related, and we'll use the best of the next 20-25 minutes to cover what is governance, what is archival, how they relate with each other, and what are best practices when you archive data, and how you can use data governance as an effective tool for archival and vice versa. So we'll start with governance. I want to take about 30 seconds to ask the audience here today what they consider is governance. What is data governance? Can you guys pass on your comments on what is data governance? And we'll just wait for 30 seconds to see some responses, and then we'll continue on with the conversation. So while we do that, Malik, what's your thought on data? What is data governance?
But before going there, data governance is a very huge topic, and 30 seconds seem to be very small. But anyway, from my experience, what I see is when I started off, data governance was very small. I had very little knowledge about what it is, and I also thought by defining certain rules, it was easily achievable. But later came to know data governance is not something that should be approached in one size fits all. It has different variations, it has different approaches, and I know like this entire conversation we're going to talk about it. Why don't we see the comments and start from there?
All right. While we wait for comments, I'll give you my perspective of what is data governance, right? So again, data governance is how I would consider a field that has been around for a long time, but has gained a lot of prominence in the recent years, right? Mainly due to European GDPR, PDPA, all these different privacy laws. But really, what is data governance? Data governance is a framework, right? It's a framework for people to manage their data, for an organization to manage their data. When I say framework, you know your typical governor, right? Like your California governor, organizations governors. They are not on the field, but they help set up policies on how your operation runs, how your business runs, how your country runs, right? So data governance is pretty similar. You establish the framework on how your data gets managed. It starts with how you understand your data. It moves on to how you develop policies for managing the data. It moves on, and from there, once you define what your policies are, then it's about implementing those policies to actively manage the data and then creating standards on how your data is stored, processed, and provisioned inside your organization. Now, creating a proper data governance ensures data accuracy, data accessibility, data consistency, and data security. Now, data security is one of the big reasons why governance is becoming more and more visible between organizations. But there are other benefits that data governance brings to organization. It creates better insights, better analytics, and mainly just great value on the data that you manage. We have received few comments, and I would like to read one of them, which is pretty cool. Supervising the data that we stored in the archival solution. That's fantastic. So that's one point to Mr. Vignesh, and we'll go from there. So now that we have defined what is governance, I would like to ask another question to some of the audience here, right? Like, what are the different types of governance, and how are they important? In other words, governance itself can be implemented or managed in an organization through multiple ways. What are their different types? What do you think involves, or what constitutes governance? Anything that you guys can think of, see, please put it in the comments. We'll be happy to look at your comments before we proceed further with our conversation here.
But on top of my mind, like I could think of several of the factors that can contribute data governance. As we wait for the comments,
Sure.
it could itself be a topic of its own, and we can go about for hours talking about it. But to summarize, right, I think we have to stick to the four major pillars that we considered as the primary stepping point for data governance. So we'll just wait for like
Sure.
the most.
Go ahead. Malik. Why don't you go ahead and walk through what you consider are the different parts of data governance or different areas of data governance?
So, like I said, there are different, but I'm going to just summarize the four major ones. Where first one is data cataloging. So, first of all, data governance is like having a set of rules and best practices to make sure that your data is kept organized, it is secure, and also made trustworthy. And data catalog is going to be the very starting point. It's all about creating a centralized list where you keep track of all the data assets. And when I mean data assets, it could be anything like your database, the information database, or it could be something in the data lake, or probably it could even be a file system, either in the cloud or in your on-prem servers anywhere. So all these items are supposed to be captured, and the data cataloging usually involves two major steps, which is the discovery, the first part that we talked about, and the second part is managing the metadata. So when I talk about managing metadata, we have to like collect all the necessary information, find out who owns the data, who has access to the data, set up rights and permissions to manage it in such a way that it becomes predominantly a search engine like system for you to find out what data you have, like just like googling over the internet. So
See, there
that's
are different tools for managing the data catalogs, right? Like there are off-the-shelf COTS products that you can use for creating data catalogs. But what I feel is very interesting is that data cataloging is considered as a reactive or a post process where once data is generated, you just capture and catalog information. I personally believe data catalog is an active process where data catalog is part of the data. Metadata becomes part of the data. When you generate data with metadata, when you catalog information at the source of the information getting generated and keep updating the catalog when the data gets updated, that's where true governance is established. This is just my 20 cents on the data cataloging itself, right? But moving on, data privacy. Now, data privacy, it's considered as the protection of security or protection of private information, but it is actually the controlling and the access to private information is how I feel about it, right? It's not just that you can talk about data privacy, you can just think data name, SSN, date of birth, right? It's about who has access to the and the person whose information is being held by organization, how does he define the usage of that information? And most of the laws today, including GDPR, PDPA, whatever, right, different countries laws are all focusing on data privacy. And what they are all trying to tell us is, hey, while you are the custodian of the data, you are not the owner of the data. The person whose information is being captured is the actual owner of the data, and he gets to define what data can be captured, what data can be managed and maintained, right? Now, data classification is another very, very important pillar for data governance. So you guys could have seen that most of your mails will be marked as private and confidential, right? Private, confidential, restricted usage. So that's where, when the mail gets generated, it gets categorized automatically or it gets classified automatically. Now, that's a very simple example of data classification, but essentially what data classification means is the ability to define what is the information within the unstructured data or the content that's being generated, not just content or structured data, and then classifying that to define who has access to that information. So that defines data classification, right? And data quality again is a very, very exciting topic for me because it's again an area where we see a lot of prominence, mainly for the fact that there is a big focus on AI, and when the data quality is maintained on the training data, the AI algorithms are not biased. The outputs of the AI algorithms are not biased. So there is more importance from a governance perspective placed on the quality of the data that's being maintained, so that training of algorithms, creating analytic insights becomes very, very, very important. Malik, anything you'd like to add here? Sorry, I keep.
Yeah, so, but just like you're telling about the importance, why do you think data quality is kind of important for AI?
Because if you are able to manage the quality of data, and if you are able to ensure the diversity of information that is being presented to the training algorithms, you ensure that your output is not biased and very accurate, right? Your recommendation or output of the AI becomes very, very important.
Yeah, so that's really true. Like ensuring that we have good quality of data also increases the reliability on the outcomes that we produce. It could either be the reports that we generate or the AI algorithms that we run on. So having good data quality is paramount. Moving on to data lineage, see, data lineage is something that gets different perspectives when I ask different people. The major reason for it is the complexity that it handles. But to put it in simple terms, it's like following the breadcrumbs of your data journey. Okay? This might sound very simple, but let me relate it with an analogy. So let's say that we are seeing a match of cricket where there is a last ball being bowled by the bowler and the batsman is supposed to hit a six. And given that the winning is essential for the batsman, he swings his bat and it goes to over the boundary and he actually wins. While you might be against the winning or losing team, you might be wondering about the successful swing that the batsman made, or you may be sympathizing with the sadness that the bowler had. But have you ever imagined of the journey that the ball took? So data lineage is all about exactly understanding that journey of your data.
And the
So
reason why he hit a six instead of a four or lose his wicket.
sure. So to continue with the analogy, the cricket ball, right? It starts from the hands of the bowler. So now this can very much be related to a data falling from a data source. Now this data source can either be a database or probably even a sensor. Now when the ball is released in the air, the bowler would actually do some kind of swing on his finger, which could end up becoming a spin or maybe a bouncer or something. And this can be related to the transformation that happens over the data, which could either be a filtering or an aggregation operation or anything like relating or combining the data with more than one entity. And finally, when the batsman hits and the float cheers, it's a final outcome which can be related to the sales report or probably the customer profile that ends up from that transformations. So this cricketing journey of the ball, the data, and this is what data lineage is all about. So,
So,
Prakarka, any
Malik, we've talked about data lineage and all the different facts of data governance itself, right? Let's talk a little bit about data archival here. So, see, my take on data archival is the preservation of information with compliance. That's how I see data archival. Why don't you tell me about how you perceive data archival?
For me, data archival is like a process where any data that is business complete or something that need not be modified anymore can be moved to a different system, primarily for satisfying two reasons. One is the preservation of information, and secondly for compliance. Do you agree with that?
See, I would say that see there is data itself falls under two categories, right? Business complete data and active data. When you talk about this, right, let's take an invoice for an example. When an invoice is being actively updated, when an invoice is generated, it's considered active data. But when the invoice is paid and when the customer is no more, that data still exists within your production systems, mainly for a couple of reasons. For your month-end reporting, for your yearly reporting, primarily for reporting purposes. But there is no active use of the data. The only reason somebody will access that information is for history, right? But they are not going to update the invoice anymore because that invoice is now part of your history. You don't want to change that. Even if you want to make a correction, create the correction invoice on top of that, correct? So this is the same thing with account statements. When an account transaction is made, the data itself is read-only. It just keeps sitting on your production system because there is no other options being considered. So any business complete data can be archived. That's how I see it. And when business complete data is archived across the enterprise and managed within a governed and compliant archival solution, you establish and create true data governance because an archive does not have a write option. So data cannot be tampered with any archives, right? And when business complete data gets into an archive, it automatically ensures data governance to one level because data cannot be tampered with. But then today, the modern archives that we have are much more matured in the sense that you also apply compliance, you apply classification on data, you create a lot of metadata that defines how data gets stored within the archive, and that itself is a big topic. I'm pretty sure you'll be very excited to talk about it. But the governance becomes a part of the archive, and thereby, when a majority of the enterprise data gets within the archive and is managed only within the archive, governance, the organization itself becomes very governed. So this is a concept that we are seeing a lot of organizations adopt more and more. I would want to talk about how governance is placed on the archive itself. Of course, when data gets ingested, you manage the data quality, you manage the governance of the data. But in an archive, the most important thing is the metadata, right? The metadata is how you establish governance within the archive. Malik, why don't you talk a little bit about what your perspective on metadata is and how metadata helps manage the governance of data within the archive?
So when we talk about metadata, right, for me, over the course of time, I have seen different versions of it. It's like a chameleon that adopts according to who sees it and based on how we view it. The general description of metadata is something that defines the structure and probably what format it holds, how it is enabled, and how it is related, which basically is the technical metadata. So, but there are other forms of metadata. So if you see here, I've listed out six of the major types, which I think the different forms that we come across in day-to-day basis. So the second one, the business metadata, it's more about understanding what meaning each and every data assets had because of its existence, why it is related, how it is managed, why is it available to be called as an asset. All of that is defined only when you put the business insight or the context in relation to it, and it is useful and it is necessary because we need to make decisions based on these reasons, and capturing that is a very essential.
See, business metadata itself is something that the business defines, right? It's not something a tool can capture. Whereas I would say a technical metadata is something that there are a lot of off-the-shelf softwares that can capture and bring that information into an archive. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Karka. So that's the major reason why we need to go up with something like open metadata, where information that we have gets captured, but also there is a provision for someone to add that extra insight that helps us make better decisions at later point.
Very true. Very true. Now,
So
see, when you govern and when you use metadata to archive the data, is it really important you capture all of this different types of metadata?
not essentially, like it is a progressive action that can be taken, which can add value over time. But But remember, we are dealing with a world which is constantly regulated, and our changes are going to be modified in day-to-day basis. So capturing and making something essentially being recorded is something that we should aim for, and that's a proactive approach that we should adopt to make governance as part of every operation that we do.
And of course, we have all the tools today that can automate and capture, like our archive can absolutely take care and capture every one of this piece of information, right? Like, so operational metadata is something that is a good to have for a long time, but I don't think we have the luxury of saying I don't need to manage and store my operational metadata anymore. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I do have that. See, it's more about you record some information today, you have it in your logbook, and preferably later on in the future, when you have some operation to take care of, you go back, look at this history, predict how better you could perform based on the time that you have, based on the data quality that you have. So, operation metadata is something that can provide you insight, but maybe not too essential today.
Exactly, and there is also one more facets to it, right? How AI has played a very big role on both archival and governance of data, right? Especially governance of data within the archive itself. If you see, we use AI today with our solution for capturing information, capturing metadata, which is the technical metadata. We use AI for optimizing our storage and making sure that operationally the data performs well during the search, which is the operational metadata. We use AI to manage the data quality. We use AI to create relationships within different data sets. So AI has actually made governance on top of archive data very sophisticated or very manageable. What do you say?
It has made it essential. At the same time, it has also become made it easy.
See, another
So
part of data governance that I don't see here that I think is very important to talk about with our audience is data bunker, right? Like the ability to separate private information, store it in a bunker, anonymize and then pseudonymize the data. So that's another capability that I think adds a lot of value from a governance perspective to an archive, and also helps archive as a very very effective tool for governance itself. What's your thought on that, Malik?
yeah, so we talked about data cataloging and data privacy. So when you combine both of them together, you actually have to secure data at the end of the day. And any solution that supports that security, that strengthens the ability to make sure that your data is intact every time, is actually a good for governance.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
any solution that provides it might be winning the market over time.
Very true, very true. And that's where we are evolving and we are building our product to make archival as a very effective tool for governance itself, right? So we are kind of at the bottom of the hour. We have 3 more minutes. I would like to take a minute to see if there are questions. Anybody would like to comment on what we have discussed so far, so that we can cover some of the topics in a little bit more detail. Let's just wait for a few seconds to see if there are any questions from any of our audience, or we'll just continue our conversation. So
See,
while we wait for comments here, Malik, what's your thought on how governance is going to make a bigger play for archival itself?
okay, so like I said, the regulatory needs of the world are changing day to day, and the traditional archival practices might not be something that we will be able to continue. We need to have a solution that is able to adopt and change according to the needs of the organization, the needs of the region in which it is deployed, and we also have to think about having an open metadata model that can adopt to the available information that we currently have, and incorporate it into the solutions that can continue with simpler workflows rather than complicating it over time.
So Malik, we have a question here, right? How to handle data quality issues when integrating data from multiple sources? A very, very interesting and good question, right? So when we are archiving data from different sources and when we are bringing data to the archive, one of the big challenges is how you access data between sources and how you manage the quality of the data. So, from my perspective, it starts with how you bring the data in, right? At the point of analysis or when you start archiving your information, if you are able to define your metadata correctly and if you are able to use your metadata to validate the data that comes within your archive, then you have a clearly established metadata portfolio across all of your archive. Okay? And we have been very effectively able to use metadata to normalize and create relationships across different sources, manage the quality of data and create extremely complex compliance reports from different data sources using this one methodology, which is managing the quality of the data through metadata. Malik, what's your thought on this question?
To put a simple answer to it, it's all about defining the constraints and ensuring that while the data comes in, appropriately notify people based on whether the quality is met or not. You might sometimes have acceptable qualities which can probably be taken in, but we need to ensure that the trust score or something gets recorded to inform back and let the users know that there are some constraints which could potentially be addressed over time.
Wonderful, Malik. Now we are at the bottom of the hour. So, to all of those guys who have joined us today, thanks for joining, and we have more interesting content coming up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.